What's up, guys? This is Mental Dude, and I figured that as this is a trend that's going on YouTube, I would hop on the bandwagon and react to some of these crappy share my story things. Yeah, these are supposedly true, but they're obviously not. So let's watch I Am Allergic to School.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emma. I am 13 years old. I live with my beloved parents in the city of flowers, Portland. My parents love me unconditionally. We are a happy family. I love making new friends. In fact, I am habitual to that. It is my second day in my new school, the third school of mine within the last few weeks. It is fun changing schools. I am happy and relieved. It was the new academic year of mine. I had gotten admission in my new school after shifting from Victoria to Portland. On the very first day, during the assembly, I started getting rashes on my skin. It was irritating. My skin became red. I was scared. I cried out, and one of the teachers approached me. The teacher thought I had gotten the sun rashes and called my parents to take me back home. My parents took me home. My skin was still reddish. My dad gave me some usual tablets, and I was okay in a few hours. It was for the first time I had gotten such rashes on my skin, but I forgot this very soon and went happily to school the next day. I was asked to stand in the shed because of yesterday's incident, but within the next few minutes, the same rashes developed on my skin. This time, I was completely frightened. I started crying, and the school teachers approached me and consoled me somehow. My parents were called again, were unable to understand the reason behind these. I denied going to that school, and as my mother supported my decision, I changed my school. I was very happy about the new school. It was my first day. The school was fascinating. It had a lot of flowering plants in its garden near the playing ground. The first day for the new student in that school was greeted with the playing period. I was so happy. We were playing seesaw on the ground. I ate the chocolate my friend offered. After some time, my skin began to irritate, rash, and again he took me back home. It was very strange. I didn't have sun allergy nor any skin issues before. My dad inquired about any unknowing thing which may have caused allergies, but failed. Maybe it was due to the chocolate, he said. I came back home. After taking tablets, I was normal but worried.
If I'm being honest, if it was an allergic reaction to the chocolate, the rash wouldn't be all over her body. It would most likely result in if there was a rash, areas in which skin came in contact with chocolate, so probably hands and around the mouth. A few other things that would have probably happened is potentially the closing of the throat or vomiting. But I don't know, I'm not allergic to any food. So, yeah. But no, if it was caused by the chocolate, it'd most likely be around, areas in which chocolate came in contact with the skin. So, yeah, I don't fucking know. So let's continue.
My parents were worried too. The next day I went to school. Everything was fine. I was happy with my wellness. I was okay till lunch hour, and we went. Still, I got rashes. The principal called my parents from recent school. He caught the reason behind the rashes. On the next day, he took me to the school in bright sunlight. I was okay. Then he took me into my classes. I was okay. He gave me some chocolate to eat. I was okay. Then he took me to the playing ground, and after a few minutes, I started developing rashes on my skin. He had beat the right hot metal. The flowering garden may have some flowers that were allergic to me. He also invested the first school and got to know that they had some flowers in common, and that was why I was getting rashes. Finally, the issue was solved. I was removed from that school too. After a big investigation, my dad found a school having no such.
I'm allergic to school. No, you're allergic. No. You're allergic to plants. They didn't say that she has hay fever, which is a shame because I was going to do a sperm joke. Because if you have hay fever, congratulations. You're allergic to plant sperm. I'm doing a thumbs up right now. Plant sperm.
Flowering plants. I was happy, excited.
I have X-ray
I
vision.
have X-ray vision. Hi, my name is Barry, and I have X-ray vision. It must sound absolutely crazy to you all, and I can imagine you probably don't believe me, but hear me out. I was a completely normal boy before this happened. I didn't get bitten by a spider or exposed to strange chemicals or anything of the sort.
Well,
I just woke up one morning, and it seemed so odd since there was always a wall there. It wasn't like I was looking out the window. I blinked several times, but I still could see the street. When I rubbed my eyes and looked again, the wall was there once more. I figured I must have been dreaming, and woken up just after it, like one of those hyper-realistic dreams, you know? So I went to the bathroom and took a shower, but it happened again. I could see my house's backyard instead of the wall. I completely freaked out and jumped out of the shower. Could this be possible? I dried off and got dressed in a rush and ran outside. I squinted my eyes and looked around. Much to my surprise, I could easily see through everything I wanted to. I could switch back to my normal vision and then to the X-ray one with increasing ease. It was amazing. I could barely believe what was going on, but I knew now that I wasn't dreaming and that this was really happening. He freaked out. What if the government tried to catch me and do it? I could see through walls, through desks and papers and even clothes. Being a teenager, you can imagine how much fun I had with that particular ability. You'd be surprised by how many people go around without any underwear underneath their clothes.
One huge problem obviously you can't have X-ray vision, but also that's not how X-ray works. X-rays work by sending particles in a wave called an X-ray wave light thing. Basically, they send out. I'm not entirely sure how this remembers because I haven't done that part of physics since year 11, and I'm currently in my second year of college. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but X-rays work by sending particles, and they bounce off things. It's why you can see bone, but which is why, basically you can use an X-ray to see bones, but you can't use it to see, say, someone naked, because X-rays just bounce off solid materials, like for instance, bone or metal, but they can't bounce off, like, organic material. Well, technically, bone is up. They can't bounce off things like muscle or flesh or anything like that. They can only bounce off things that are resistant to them, aka things like metal and bones. So yeah, it's obviously bullshit. You can't have X-ray vision.
I didn't expect it to be so mainstream. Perhaps someone braver than me, and far more selfless, would have used this power to fight crime in seconds and amaze my friends with my abilities. I also began pretending to be psychic at school. I spent hours talking about how it was possible for my mom and dad to
see.
It's a random name I selected. I'm making this video to discover if there are other people like me.
Let's go for the clickbait one.
I was born deaf, but for a week now, I've been able to hear everything. And what I thought was a blessing may be a bit of a curse, too. When I was born, my mom and dad were expecting a perfect son. The ultrasound all came out right. I had all my fingers, all limbs, perfect little face. I was going to be their normal, beloved child. At first, everything seemed to be all right. My parents were so happy. They received me into their lives with open arms. That was until they began taking me to the doctor's appointments all newborns have to go through. One of them is called the newborn hearing screen. She was informed that I was deaf, and that though they could search for treatment, it was unlikely I would ever hear. I wouldn't know it till a few weeks ago, but this broke my parents' hearts. They wanted me to be normal and perfect, and they had just discovered I was deaf. They were mad. Try all sorts of treatments. They wanted so badly to have what they considered to be a normal child. I was subjected to a few painful procedures and others that were simply annoying, but nothing worked. They kept taking me to specialist after specialist, hoping to get a second, third, and fourth opinion. Some doctors gave them false hopes, and they'd pay a lot of money for what was supposed to be the solution to my problem. Big surprise, nothing worked. I was deaf, and they eventually gave up trying to fix me. I hate that they thought that there was something to fix, like I was broken. I was just a kid who wanted to have fun and be loved by their parents like any other child. But they didn't offer me the best childhood, to be honest. I grew up feeling really isolated, found myself alone most of the time. My parents refused to send me to a special school, so I had to. They always told me they were so busy. It was really hard. I wanted to have a conversation with them, and it was almost impossible. When I was a kid, I'd spend a lot of time wishing I could be normal. I hate that others seemed annoyed by my condition and tried to ignore me when I gestured at them or spoke. It wasn't the easiest of childhoods. Sure, I always had a roof over my head and food on the table, but a child needs more than just food and shelter. I needed my parents' love and support, and they weren't there for me. My parents would eventually come to understand how wrong they had been, and how messed up what they did to me was. But in order for them to learn this lesson, something extraordinary had to happen. Something that would change my life forever, completely unexpectedly.
Okay.
You must remember my terrible home life, but the situation at school wasn't any better either. I hardly had any friends at all and felt alone all the time. Because I never heard how words were pronounced, I spoke the best I could. I thought I was doing a good job, but I would soon find out that others didn't think so. They mocked the way I said certain words and the tone I used, like I had any way of changing it. Honestly, I was a lonely kid. I tried to fit in, partner in group assignments. They told the teacher it was too hard to work with me. I felt so lonely and blue. Really good at it. I even got an award on one of my paintings in high school. I had no idea that my life was about to change in this dream. The birds chirping, the dogs barking, people talking in the street. It was incredible. When I woke up, I was sure that it had all been just a dream. But then how could it be that I heard when I never before could? So I sat up on my bed and tried to listen. And to my surprise, I could actually understand everything around me, even the tick-tock of my clock. I couldn't understand how this was happening, but I was so happy. It was the best day of my life, or so I thought. I ran downstairs, ready to tell my mom and dad all about this miracle. But then I heard them talking in the kitchen about me. They were worried about what would happen to me after they were gone, how I would deal with life with my disability. I was actually startled by a loud sound. When I got to school, it got even worse. I could finally listen to what my classmates were saying about me. They called me all kinds of nasty insults, like a complete loser and other cruel nicknames. I locked myself in the toilet and covered my ears to enjoy the silence for a while, needing some peace and quiet. It was all so overwhelming. To say about me, and much to my surprise, there was a girl in my class that actually thought I was cute. Finally, though, I had enough. I needed to confront my parents and let them know I knew what they really thought about me, how neglectful they had acted all through my childhood. I told them everything, how I could suddenly hear, how I had been listening to everything they said about me for weeks. I explained how much it hurt me and how wrong the way they...
I had gotten married young. Younger than most. My boyfriend and I had been dating since we were 14, and by the time we reached high school, we were sure we were going to get married. My parents had gotten together young too, right away without telling anyone. Neither of us wanted a wedding. We went in to see our doctor, who was very excited too. She did a test and confirmed that my pregnancy was perfect, no complications. Younger than most. Our parents were a little The machine was brought over to me and the cold gel squirted on my belly. The doctor moved the wand around and turned the monitor to face us so we could see everything. Holy moly, she said. She turned off the monitor, wiped off my belly, took off her gloves and said, Prepare yourselves because you're about to be parents of 8 babies. You are pregnant with octuplets.
Wow.
She explained that when she was palpitating my belly, she thought she felt more than 2 babies. She said her hospital had never birthed octuplets and how excited everyone was. I started crying. I felt embarrassed, but this was all too much.
You know what?
Here I was in labor, hormones raging, about to become a new mom, and finding...
Like, I've heard of people having, like, 6, but what is it? Yeah, it's weird. 'Cause I don't think I've ever heard of everyone having, like, 5 or, like, 7 babies. I've heard of people having, like, 2, 3, 4, well, obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. But yeah. God. Oh, God, it must be really annoying, because, like, at least, like, some of them... Yeah, because if you have, like, more than, like, 2 babies at once, like, if you're having triplets or quadruplets or so on, at least 2 of them are going to be identical because of the way, like, twins work. Because there's 2 types of twins. There's, like, identical ones and non-identical ones. Identical ones are made from the same egg that split, and non-identical ones... No, an identical... Well, yeah, that's identical ones. Identical ones are the... came from the same egg. Non-identical ones came from 2 separate eggs. But, like... What? Just... Okay. Just... Okay. I know, it must be extremely rare, though.
That instead of 2, I was having 8. My mind was whirling. Jason was sitting there open-mouthed in shock with little to say. I knew what I wanted him to say. It will be all right, honey. We'll figure everything out. Even in that situation, I was still the practical one. I pulled myself together between contractions and told Jason he needed to circle the wagons and get us some help. He left to call our parents and tell them the news. As I thought, they completely took over. They rushed out and bought 6 more cribs, a truckload of diapers, and everything else we needed. How are we even going to get them? I ran as fast as I could. Every inch of my body was shaking. I was so scared. How could I be so stupid? How could I let this happen to myself? I ducked down in the plants, terrified. What if they caught me? What would they do to me now that I knew the truth? Just the thought of it made me want to throw up. I could see their flashlights looking for me. With shaking hands, I started to dial 911 on the phone. If something happened to me now, no one would know where I went. The phone started to ring, just as their flashlights got closer and closer. I held my breath as the 911 operator picked up. How was I going to get out of this? Every step they inched closer and closer to me. My chance of getting out of here alive seemed worse and worse. Before we get into my escape, I need to explain how I got myself into such a terrifying situation. To be honest, all I did was wake up. One morning, I opened my eyes in bed and felt a wave of panic wash over me. My head felt so fuzzy, almost like I was in a dream or something. I looked around and started to really freak out. I didn't recognize anything. Where was I? And who was I? I got out of bed and started to look around the room. Anna was in pink letters on the wall. But did I even like pink? Why didn't that name sound familiar? I felt like I was going to pass out. None of this made sense. Was I going crazy? Why couldn't I remember anything? What was my name? Was it really Anna? I bolted out the door into a strange hallway. I felt like I was on... Calm down. I freaked out a few days ago and had been out cold ever since. Of what apparently was my childhood. And I had to admit, the photos looked exactly like me when awake. Have you ever had a night like this? Where you feel like something in your life just isn't right? At one point, I woke up and heard talking outside my door. I crept over to try to hear what they were saying. My mother and father talked in hushed tones. My mother was concerned something was really wrong with me, that they should take me to some inpatient. We were the only house for miles to outs. After a couple of days, it almost started to feel familiar. Maybe all the craziness was starting to wear off. Maybe I could be a normal person again. And if it was mine, what was the letter for? I thought about asking my mom, but maybe it was better if I kept this as my little secret and investigated myself. A few nights later, at dinner, there was a knock at the door. My mom and dad both looked really alarmed. When they looked out front, there was a police car. Why were the police here? I was about to ask when my mom ushered me upstairs. I tried to listen as best as I could, and that's when I heard the word missing. Were they looking for a missing person? I felt a lump in my throat. Was I paranoid again? My mom had said herself I had shown signs of paranoia, and these people, that possibly be. I took a step in the office, and the wooden plank under me seemed to move. I lifted it up to find an entire box of documents underneath. Finally, maybe there would be something in here that would help. When I lifted the first thing out of that box, my heart stopped. It was a school ID with the name Daria on it, and it was a photo of me, as clear as day. I couldn't breathe. I could hardly even think. Where had this come from? I looked even closer at the photo and realized I was wearing a necklace. The same necklace that I had found at the foot of my bed. It was an obituary, followed by a death certificate for a girl named Anna. She had died when I was 12 after a fall from the loft in the barn where she hit her head. I started to hyperventilate. Were they pretending that I was their daughter? I grabbed the cell phone that was sitting on the desk and opened the window. It was on fire. I ran as fast as they got a hold of me. My real parents would have no idea what happened to me. Tears started to spill. I dialed 911. I had to get the police here. It was the only way I was going to be able to survive. It was really my only way out. I listened to the phone ring, holding my breath. That's when I saw the lights getting closer and closer. They were only a few feet away. If I talked to the police, surely they would hear me. The operator picked up, asking what my emergency was. I stayed silent, trying not to move. The operator asked again and again if I had an emergency. Then, she asked if there was a reason I couldn't speak. If there was, I should press 1. I tried to hide the light from the phone as I pressed the button. She asked if I was in danger, and again, I pressed the button. I was so afraid they would see. I was afraid I would never see my family again. The operator told me the police were on the way, and I felt a rush of house. Maybe the police would be here by the time we got there. I couldn't even breathe anymore. The air in my lungs felt like a police car. I fell on the ground, crying as the police cuffed the man and woman. Their eyes nearly burnt a hole through me as they were put in the back of the car. The police officers ran to me, their eyes as big as an owl's. I had been missing for 3 months. They had no idea if they were ever going to find me. Once I got to the station, I was reunited with my real mother and father. It was like everything clicked for me. I still didn't remember my old life, but I felt like this was finally right. I'm working every day to get my memory back, and I did end up going to a facility where I'm getting counseling that is really helping me. Overall, I'm so happy to be home.
I just want to see if I can find
everything else we needed. How are we even going to get them home from the hospital?
I want to see this one.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel, and I'm 16 years old. Recently, I tried to find my real parents, but I ended up almost going to jail. I was saved by a miracle, and I'd like to tell you about it. I'll start from the very beginning. A couple of years ago, I found out that I was adopted. It was by accident, actually. My father had health problems, and he needed a transplant. Of course, I volunteered to help, but I was turned down. Not because I was too young, but because I was not a relative of my father's. It was then that my parents told me that I was adopted. It was a huge blow to me, but we had no time to fight about my adoption, but my parents kept saying that it didn't matter, and that they loved me, and that my past meant nothing. Then I got angry about the fact that they had kept this information from me, and our relationship got worse because of our constant bickering. Plus, Dad's illness took all the money and energy that our family had, and it was a very difficult time for us. Life was hard. Nate always came up with some cool ideas. For example, once he showed me how we could get into the stadium and watch a baseball game for free. Of course, then we had to run away from the guards, but it was fun. We always left those guys behind and just laughed at them. But once our prank ended badly. We always passed this one billboard on our way home from school. There was a picture of a man on it with a big smile, inviting us to see the dentist. This ad was very annoying, and we saw it every day. One day, Nate thought it would be a good idea to adjust the picture, so we took cans of spray paint and began to add small details on the picture. The job was done, and it turned out pretty nice. But it seems that someone didn't like our work and called the police while we were painting. And this right there in the police station. It wasn't until that moment that I really understood how bad the relationship was. Nate didn't like his parents at all because he was a complete disappointment to them. I got angry. I had so much. Parents were very young when my mom got pregnant with me, and they understood that then they could not have a child because their salvation was my adoptive parents. They couldn't have children of their own, so they were happy to adopt a child. And right after a child, what were my bylaws? There are many services on the internet and the city where they lived. Then I found them on Facebook, looked at their pictures, and saw the house they lived in. Oh, it looked like they were very successful because for money for a bus ticket. But my mom and dad were really alarmed by my request. They thought I was going to do something bad, and they forbade our new adventure. After a little argument, we arrived in the evening, and he was comforting and supportive himself and said I came here because I was his son. There was an awkward silence for a moment. Then he invited us inside, and it made me angry. All my life, I lived in a small house, and I had no idea that my real parents were so rich. And at the same time, they didn't, or that they would call the police. We had no choice. We had to just leave. I was so angry with them. How dare they say that to their own son? No, I wasn't going to leave it just like that. They had to pay for what they did. So Nate and I came up with a plan. We wanted to get revenge. We broke the window, climbed inside, and began to break everything we could find. Bam! Bam! Shards of glass were everywhere. Then I went to the statue and started pushing it. I was almost able to knock it over, but then we heard a siren. It was the police. We dropped everything and ran to the car. Thank God we escaped before we were spotted. No, we didn't have time to steal anything, but we let off some steam and drove home happy. But after a couple of hours, our fun came to an end. My mother called, and she was in tears. The police came to our house and started asking about me. I guess my biological parents realized that it was us and told the police to surrender and brace ourselves for our punishment. Then we went through a lot of unpleasant things. I was arrested and I saw my parents' frustration. It was a terrible feeling. They were right when they forbade me to go to my birth parents' house. I should have listened to them. We did thousands of dollars worth of damage and we could go to jail. But suddenly, I was released and told that the charges were dropped. It turns out that my mom and dad were able to convince my biological parents to not press charges. Instead, they were going to compensate them for the house and other damages. And they agreed. I don't know why. Maybe they felt guilty for giving up their child somewhere deep down, and so they paid off their moral debt this way. I don't know. Now, I'll spend the next few years working to pay off the debt to my parents. But the main thing that I realized is that they are the most valuable people in my life, even if they're not my birth mom and dad. Nate's parents are related to him, but they don't love him half as much as my foster parents love me. I wanted to find my biological parents so badly that I almost lost my real family. They're wonderful people, and I'm sorry I did this to them. I love them very much, and I will try to make amends. That's the end of my story, guys. Thank you for your...
This story is about my violent stepbrother. I was so scared he would hurt me that I tricked him into committing a crime, so he had to serve a long prison sentence. It all started when my mother got married to George. He was an absolute jerk, but his son Peter was even worse.
He had autism and always stared at my body, even though I told him to stop doing it.
Come on.
Sometimes he even tried to hug me, so I had to physically push him away.
Come on.
Maybe he didn't have bad intentions, but I didn't care. I told him he was a huge creep and a loser. Unfortunately, my mom thought I was disrespectful. She said, "He has a disability and you need to be nice to him." I responded, "But I'm scared. He wants to hug and touch me and he's much stronger than I am." But my mother wouldn't listen. You see, Peter often had meltdowns where he suddenly attacked his own dad and bit into his arm. But what if he attacked me one day? Well, my mom didn't care. She forced me to have regular board game nights with Peter.
In fact, I find it rather offensive, the way her attitude towards her brother. As a person with autism myself, it pisses me off. She's disrespectful. Seriously, do not, just because someone's different doesn't mean that you should treat them like that.
She always acted as if one time we all went swimming at a lake. I was wearing a bikini when Peter came up to me and just stared at my breasts. It made me feel very uncomfortable, so I screamed, "I don't like you, no girl likes you, and that's why you're gonna die alone as a creep." His reaction surprised me. He sat down and just started crying. Suddenly I felt bad for him and apologized. I said, "Hey, I'm sorry for what I just said. Actually, you are a nice guy." But I regret saying that because he stood up and hugged me, pressing my body against his. I had to push him away and told him to F off. The next morning, I got ready for school and took off my pajamas to get into my favorite leggings. But when I turned around, my heart skipped a beat. Was there someone laying below my bed? I looked closer, and yes, there was my stepbrother Peter. He was holding his smartphone, and I completely freaked out and screamed, "Get the F out of my room, you dirty creep!" Peter got up, and that's when I realized that he must have been filming me the whole time. That's why I tried to take it away from him, but he was too strong and just left. I felt so angry and helpless. Peter could do whatever he wanted and just blame his autism. I went to my stepdad and said, "Get your son under control. He filmed me this morning from under my bed. He saw me changing my clothes and he is a creep." But my stepfather started laughing and said, "Calm down. He's harmless. He just doesn't know how to properly talk to an attractive girl like you."
Exactly.
I freaked out and screamed, "But I don't like him back and I never will. He is a creep." My stepdad got angry and said, "No one cares who you like. My son has autism and you have to respect that." I couldn't believe it. No one punished my stepbrother for filming me while I was naked. So it was no surprise when the next day, Peter put his hand on my shoulder and asked, "Do you want to go to the cinema with me?" I kicked him so hard in the balls, he fell on his knees and cried for minutes. I said, "Don't ever touch me again." But just...
You bitch. One, he was just trying to be nice. And two, do not kick a guy in the balls for being nice. God. Yeah, seriously, don't kick a guy in the balls just because he was trying to be nice. Oh, but he's a creep, and so what if he's a bit strange?
A few hours later, my mom, my stepbrother, and I were sitting at the lunch table when he took his soup and threw it on my mom's breast. Then he laughed and said, "Nice." But instead of getting angry, my mom said, "It's okay, no worries." However, I knew Peter had done it on purpose, so I told him, "That's why you don't have friends and why you never will find a girlfriend. You are a disgusting pig." And Peter responded, "I have autism, don't bully me." Wow, he was using his disability as an excuse to behave like a jerk again. Some people are just disgusting. Well, a few months later, my stepbrother attacked one of his teachers in school. It was so bad that the teacher had to go to the hospital. My stepbrother was put on trial and got a 3-month prison sentence. My stepdad was furious and screamed at the judge, "Can't you see he has a disability?" And the next day when my stepdad sat on the couch, I went over and said, "I told you that your son is a jerk, and the judge agrees with me. Peter uses his autism as an excuse to hurt other people. I'm glad he's locked away." It was so satisfying to tell my stepdad that he was a terrible father. And then he stood up, went right into my face, and screamed, "If you say one more thing about my son, I'll throw you out of the house." I responded, "You didn't discipline him, and now the world would be a better place if your son was just dead." My stepdad kept screaming at me, but I didn't care. Life without my stepbrother was so much better. But of course he came back after 3 months, and he had changed. He had dark circles around his eyes and didn't speak. I bet his cell inmates didn't put up with his tantrums and gave him a few good beatings. I thought he had finally learned to be respectful, but he quickly went back to his old behavior, just worse. Now he would stare at my breast nonstop whenever he wanted. I I got so scared that I asked my boyfriend to move into our house. I wanted him to protect me. But when my stepbrother saw us together holding hands, he completely freaked out and screamed, "I'm her boyfriend! I'm her boyfriend!" He was like a baby, and one time I forgot to lock my door, so Peter opened it and saw my boyfriend and I making out. He got really angry and screamed, "No!" Then he got a hammer and destroyed the wall between his and my room. He even put his head through the hole and screamed at my boyfriend, "I'm gonna kill you!" And then he threw the hammer at us. He only missed my boyfriend by a few inches, and that's when we decided to get rid of him. We knew my stepbrother was on probation for beating up his teacher, so if he committed another crime, he would be sent to prison or to a mental health institution for several years. So when he was watching cartoons, we went right in front of him and made out.
You're horrible.
As expected, he freaked out again, but this time much worse. He turned into a psycho and punched so hard against the window that it broke. Then he picked up a big piece of broken glass and came towards us. He didn't know that we were filming him on a hidden camera, so I said, "Stop it, why do you want to kill us?" When he was only 1 meter away, my boyfriend shot a taser at my stepbrother and he collapsed. Then we called the cops and showed them the video footage. This time, the judge sentenced my brother to 8 months in prison. But when my stepdad found out what I had done, he resented me so much that he threw me out of the house. He screamed, "You've destroyed my son's future!"
Exactly.
And of course I was incredibly angry that my own mother allowed him to throw me out. Afterward, I didn't see or talk to my mom in years. But finally, I came back over Christmas, and yes, my stepbrother was back. To my surprise, he apologized to me, and for a moment, I thought he had changed, but then he blatantly stared at my breast again, and I knew he was the same disrespectful person as before.
Bitch.
However, now my stepdad was behaving even worse. He had lost his job 6 months earlier, which meant my mom had to work overtime every day to earn enough money. My stepdad could at least have done the housework, but instead he gave my mom orders like, "Hey, get me another drink." And that's why I took my mom to the side and told her she had to break up with my stepdad. But she started crying and said, "Since he's lost his job, he got us $20,000 into debt. If I break up with him, I have to pay back half of it, and I can't afford it." Well, that night I slept in my old room. But when I wanted to take a shower the next morning, I noticed that the underwear I had put into my bag was missing, and of course, I knew who had taken it. It was my creepy stepbrother. I didn't even want to think about what he was doing with it, and it was so disgusting that I didn't even confront him about it. However, when we opened our Christmas gifts, things escalated. My mom had bought Christmas presents for all of us, but neither my stepdad nor my stepbrother had bought her anything in return. She got so sad about it that she struggled to hold back her tears. And seeing my mom suffer made me so angry that I screamed at my stepdad, "You lazy piece of bum. My mom takes care of you. She earns the money. She does the housework, and in return you do nothing? You didn't even think about buying her a gift." My stepdad responded, "Calm down. I've tried everything to find a job, but it's a tough economy out there." I said, "Okay, show me how many job applications you have sent out this month." But he responded, "It's December. It's holiday time. No one works over Christmas." I was about to explode, but then my mom said, "You're right. They don't respect me, and they don't appreciate the sacrifice I'm making. It's over. I'm gonna move out." My stepdad jumped up and screamed at me, You've been trying to destroy this family for years.
Oh, yes,
I'm
you
suffering
have.
from depression, and you have no idea how much I struggle." Wow, did he really think he could manipulate me by making me feel guilty? Well, it didn't work. I just laughed at him and said, "Finally, you're getting what you deserve." Meanwhile, I noticed my stepbrother staring at my breast again, but I didn't care anymore. My mom moved in with me and tried to start all over, but the divorce took many months, and meanwhile, my stepdad used my mom's credit cards to get her into another $20,000 in debt. It really isn't fair, but after her divorce, she was stuck with $20,000 of debt, and it will take her years to pay it off with her small salary. But at least she's free now, and we still have each other.
Ooh, bonus story.
My dad says a mom left us after she gave birth to me. Aliens. Apparently, the aliens talked to him, but he can't remember what they said. And at the end, a blue female alien came into the room, and I guess you can imagine what happened next.
Come on.
I thought it was a funny story, but I didn't take it very serious, so I just continued my day. Meanwhile, my dad got a call from our local radio station and was invited to talk about his experience. He even made it onto the front page of our local newspaper,
weird.
and suddenly he was some kind of celebrity. People looked at him on the streets and asked how he was doing. My dad always responded with, "I'm scared of being abducted again, but I'm trying to live my life regardless of what happened." Of course, everybody thinks he's nuts, but that's okay, because I love my dad no matter what.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up there. So these stories are obviously fucking bullshit. Seriously, it's so obvious. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. So bye.